What's up everyone, Andy Cantu here from Lux Travel Hacks. Today I want to show you how to get to Italy in luxury, business or first class, and do it for as close to free as possible. So we're going to go over a bunch of topics, A to Z, so you know what we're talking about. And this is basically, well, this is everything to do with points, right? Not cash. So this is a way to use credit card points intelligently and get as much value in terms of luxury travel that you can. So we'll start from the very beginning, which is what cards and what points should I be earning, right? The answer is generally always the same. It has to do with transferable points, right? So we want to be earning Chase Ultimate Rewards, Amex membership rewards, Capital One points, or rewards, I guess they're called, Citi Thank You points. These are all transferable to various airlines, and it may seem like it doesn't apply to you if you look at it at first glance, because you go, well, Amex doesn't transfer to United, and I fly a ton of United, for example, but it's not really the case. So we'll talk about that in detail in a little bit. But anyway, those are the points you want to be earning. You want to be staying away from cashback cards, fake travel rewards cards like Bank of America or Wells Fargo that say they earn points, but really are just glorified cashback cards. And you want to stay away from co-branded cards. So those are airline and hotel specific, like United card, Delta card, especially Hilton card, Marriott card, whatever. Stay away from all of these. These are all partners that we can fly and stay at without needing to use these cards. So it's better to keep them in a currency that is transferable, like the ones I mentioned at the beginning. So basically earn the right points. That's absolutely step one on the right cards. And I'm going to put a list of all these cards and currencies and stuff below, so you don't have to worry. At the end, you'll see all the resources and sites we use today down there. So if any questions, it'll all be there. So let's talk a little bit about the actual flight booking, right? We want to go to Italy. Depending on the airport you're at, this may or may not be easy to accomplish nonstop, one stop, two stops, whatever. So I tend to start with Google Flights, and let's just say we're in, like, I don't know, Charlotte, right? Maybe not a huge hub, but it's still like a decent size airport. If you're at a much smaller airport, this is probably even more important. So Charlotte to, let's just say, Milan. You can either fly into Milan or Rome. Those are the easiest ones for Italy. There are smaller ones, but this is going to make your life easier, and then you can just train to wherever. So we can put whatever date. The idea is kind of just to find routing. So what I'm looking for here are these cities. I basically ignore the price and even sometimes the airline and stuff like that. I'm just trying to see where are the big cities I'm going to have to route through so I can have a realistic expectation of my trip. Like, and if I know if it's even possible to go from Charlotte, or should I maybe go to like New York first, spend a couple days there, and then continue to Italy to have a nonstop. So it's going to be your preference, right? But the idea is to just get an idea. So New York, there's Charlotte to Munich nonstop. That's good to know. Charlotte to Madrid, Charlotte to London. And we'll actually put one stop or fewer here. Munich, London, New York, maybe Madrid. So good to know. A lot of Londons. Only problem with London is tax tends to be high to fly through there, so unless you're going to London, it may not make a lot of sense. But some of these other ones could be good. So it's good just to get an idea, and that's where I like to start. And I also have to consider a concept called positioning, which is basically this that we're talking about here. Maybe we can't get Charlotte nonstop to Europe, so let's position to New York. I tend to build in a buffer because when you're doing this, the whole idea behind luxury travel is to kind of reduce your headaches and mental anguish and inconvenience and stuff like that, right? So I tend to build in a buffer. So if I know I need a position to New York before I fly to Milan, you can see here, this is Charlotte, New York, Milan nonstop. So if I know I need to do that, then I'll go to New York first. I'll stay there 1, 2, 3 nights, depending on the city, like, and how bad you want to actually explore it. And that kind of reduces any potential issues, right? Because if a flight is delayed or canceled or whatever, and they move it to the next day or the previous day or something, you've built a buffer so that you've prevented yourself from having this mental anguish, right? So I personally like to do that. Some people like to take the layover and continue. That's up to you, but I like to mitigate that risk of like the problem whenever possible. So positioning is an important concept, and when you do it, try to build a buffer if you can. Another thing I wanted to talk about are windows for booking. And by that I mean how far out or how close in should I be looking to book this trip? There are two windows that make a lot of sense. The first one is 11 months out, which means if you can plan far ahead, you might have a good chance of getting a really, really good deal. Airlines tend to release only about 1 or 2 points seats, and point seats are different than cash seats. They're like completely different buckets of availability, so that's important to note. If you see something here available, it may not correspond with points and vice versa. So that's the only problem with the far out window, is that they tend to release only a couple seats. So if you're 4 people or 5 people or even 3, it may be tougher to book that far out. And the second window that makes a lot of sense is 1 to 2 months out. So that's my preferred one, because all these airlines that restrict seats and whatever, like, they'll start releasing them. So I know in cash world, it's a little kind of worrisome to wait, because you think, well, the price is going to go up. You might think the same thing is true with points, but it's not. In points world, price will stay the same. It's either available or not available most of the times with most programs. So what we're waiting for is for it to become available, and that tends to happen easier closer in. And then anytime in between, 2 months all the way to 10 months, let's just say, like the whole in between of those 2 windows, some routes will be super easy to get done in between that window. Other ones will be more difficult. So anyway, just something to keep in mind. It's kind of a personal preference thing, but keep that in mind. So let's talk about the actual meat of it, which is, how do I find availability? I've earned Chase points, Amex points, Cap One points, whatever. Like, I'm in a good position. Now, how do I book a flight? How do I find availability? How do I find the best price? And how do I book the flight, right? And how do I decide if it's worth it based on the cash value and all that? So let's go over all that one by one. We're going to start with availability. I like to use a tool called seats.aero. It's free up to a certain days out, and then you have to pay, but it's cheap-ish. So anyway, it makes life a lot easier. You can also search manually. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but we'll start here. So remember earlier when I talked about the partnership concept, how if Amex doesn't transfer to United, it doesn't mean that you can't fly United. So this is a really quick way to show you this. So Air Canada, for example, Air Canada is a Star Alliance partner. United is also a Star Alliance partner. So that means they have access to each other's flights. Simple as that. And other partners are the same, assuming you start to figure out like what alliances are there. All the resources are going to be below, so you don't have to worry. But basically, that's how that concept works. So we could come here and look at Air Canada. And this is going to show us all of the Air Canada available flights, not only their own, but also United. So, for example, like if I look for Houston, I'm sure we'll find some United flight. Here's Houston to Bogota, Colombia, right? If I click the eye here, I can see that this is a United flight, but it's bookable on Air Canada. And that's how you're able to fly all of these different airlines, even though it may not on the surface seem that the credit card partners transfer to there, okay? So really, really important concept. For now, we're not going to use this version. We're just going to use a search, which searches all of the partners. And I'll talk a little bit about a few options there. So let's go to search. You can use certain city codes or country codes. So USA includes all of the big airports in the US, so you don't have to worry. In this case, we were trying to do Charlotte, so you could like add Charlotte here. And you can see I also added some Canadian airports and Mexican airports since we're nearby. Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, Cancun, and Mexico City, plus the whole US. This is just to give you like a global view of all the availability so that you know if you need to position what's available, what's not, whatever. And then we'll put here Italy, which does not have a code, so we'll just put MXP, Milan, and FCO, Rome. And if you don't know them, you can search just the city, Rome. I was talking about how my favorite window was a couple months out, so we'll just do plus or minus 28 days from like March, and that'll give us like February to April or whatever. I'll put direct flights only, even though you could also look for layover options. And I'll search for 2 seats, business class. So let's take a look. Okay. So first off, we're going to see a lot of things here. It might be overwhelming if you're new to it. Here's the date, the program it originated in, the flight, and the cost for business or first or economy or whatever. So something important to note here, some of these will be duplicates, because remember I mentioned how partners have access to other partners' things. So like United might show a flight. Let me see if I can find a good example for you. Here, we'll sort it by this. And if you hold shift, you can also click date and sort it by that as well. So you'll see everything here. And let me show you an example. I'll show you an example of the duplicate thing a little later, but let's just get into this. So we can see here that we have New York to Milan on American Airlines. And Alaska is showing it to us. That's that same partnership concept. There are some things to watch out for here. Alaska and American, we can't transfer points to. So that just means we need to find another alliance partner to book with. The same way we did with Air Canada and United earlier, we'll do the same with Alaska. And again, it'll be in the resources, so don't worry. One of the alliance partners, Alaska and AA, are One World Alliance. And one of those partners is British Airways. British Airways can be transferred to from basically all the big credit card currencies. So it's a great example. And I'll log in here in the meantime because it takes a second to load while I talk about some of this other stuff. Also, every site has a points mode. So in British Airways, it's right here, book a flight with Avios. With Air Canada, it's a checkbox. So always make sure you're in points mode when you search. Otherwise, you'll just see nothing ever, right? So I'm logged in here. Let's try to find this flight, February 24th, JFK to Milan. JFK to Milan, February, what was it, 24th. And I'll put one way only just to make life easy so we can just search pieces. The same would apply for the return, obviously. No stopover is necessary. Might take a sec to spin, so I will try to find another. We have the same options to Rome. You can see that it says there AA. And if we search here, you'll see that's American Airlines operating it. So quite a few options from JFK. And then in a second, we have these Air Canada options. So there's a lot of options. So I'll pick a few of them and I can kind of walk through them with you. So here's our flight. This is a great example of the same thing I was talking about with the partnership concept. We're on British Airways site, but we're booking an AA flight because they're part of the same alliance. So even if we couldn't get points to AA or Alaska, SeatsAero was showing us it was there and available on Alaska, so British Airways can book it. And here it is, 6 seats left in business. 77,000 points. High tax, which is pretty common for British Airways and AA specifically. So it's an option to keep in our back pocket, but it's not one that I would pick. Not because AA is bad or anything, but simply because I know we can get this done for less points and less tax. But it's an option, so we'll keep it there. Maybe the date works better and you're willing to overpay a little bit on the tax. You know, some people do that, so that's fine. Let's continue through here, and I want to find here's another New York to Milan. And there was another, I'm looking for Air Canada ones now so we can do another alliance. Here's JFK to Milan also. We click this. This is an Emirates flight. So this is an example of where you might find partnerships that have nothing to do with alliances, but they're still partnerships that you can take advantage of. SeatsAero helps you find these pretty easily. So Air Canada also allows you to book, in addition to Star Alliance flights, Emirates flights. Pretty cool. And Emirates operates a route from New York to Milan on their A380, which is their good business class product. So this would be an excellent option. We can take a look at this now, and then we'll go back to see if we can find like United flights and stuff. So you can click right there. It'll take you straight to where you need to be. A little easier than the British Airways option. And while we're on Air Canada, I'll let that load. Let's look at this other flight, New York to MXP. This is a United flight, also on Air Canada because they are Star Alliance partners. And we can see here 70,000 points and like 50, 60 US dollars of tax. That would be a good option. So we'll take a look at that. In addition, I'll open it up here in another tab. So here's our Emirates option. 3 seats left, New York to Milan, operated by Emirates on their A380. This is an amazing option. It's one of probably the nicest way to get from the US to Milan nonstop. On a great airline, great product, super reasonable points cost, much better on taxes, saves you $900 compared to the British Airways option, and you get to fly Emirates in business, right? Potentially you can upgrade to first with cash or with points. Emirates is pretty good about offering those upgrades, so that'd be pretty cool. I can show you what Emirates Business and Emirates First on the A380 will look like if you've never seen it before. So business on the A380 looks like this. Super nice plush product. I mean, very nice finishes in the wood and everything, like it's super luxury, right? And then first class is the same, but just on steroids. You get your full suite. You may or may not have seen this on like blogs or videos or whatever. Very aspirational. It's a beautiful product. They're on the A380. They have a bar. So overall, like super luxe, right? Anyway, a great option. Probably the one I would choose if I wanted to go US nonstop to Milan. I would choose this, right? So that's great. And we'll just look at one other example, which is this United flight that we opened up from SeatsAero on the 27th. Really good points cost, a little less than the others, and good on tax as well. And the only difference is this is a United flight. So that's how I would go about searching for availability. Once you find availability, you want to quote it on various partners to make sure that you can get the best price possible, right? This isn't always possible to do. Like in this case, this is a very special partnership with Air Canada and Emirates. The only other place we could quote this is Emirates, so let's go quote it there just for the sake of completeness, right? So JFK, Milan, it was March 13th, business class, so March 13th. And to clarify, what we're looking for is to find the exact same flight and see what a different partner would charge for it. And Emirates is another good partner because we can transfer here from all the major credit card currencies, Chase, Amex, whatever. So we could use this or Air Canada. They're both transferable from all the places, so it's literally just who gives you the better deal, right? So let's see what they'll charge us. And for this United flight, we'll do the same. We can quote that on United, of course. Chase transfers there, and a lot of people even have United points sitting there. And we can quote it on Life Miles, which is a partner that Amex has. And I know it's just like all over the place, but all these partners, you'll start to realize which ones they are and whatever. And they'll be in the resources so that you know you can look at certain partners for certain flights and kind of remove some of that doubt. So I'll leave that open. I just wanted to kind of load stuff. Let's see. Emirates is charging us 87,000 miles for that same New York to Milan flight, leaving at 10:20 p.m. 10:20 p.m. So it's the same one. So they're charging 10K more points and 30 more bucks of tax or something like that. It's not bad if it was the only option, and sometimes it is the only option, but in this case we can get it done for 76. So Air Canada would win in that case, and that's a quick example of the Emirates quoting. It's a little simpler. And with this United flight, we know Air Canada's price, 70K. Let's see what United will charge for their own program for their own flight, right? So this is February 27th. Let's see. Business, book with miles, that's what I was talking about earlier. And 80K for a 6 p.m. flight. Here, let's sort this here. Did I search for the right thing? Oh, yeah, it's a 6:25 p.m. flight. I was thinking of the Emirates one. So this is the same flight, 80K versus 70. $5 of tax instead of 60. So depends if you want to spend a little less points or money, vice versa. You could pick one or the other. And now let's look at a Life Miles quote and see what they charge. JFK to Milan in business. And all this applies for economy too. If you're choosing to do that, I just like to look at the luxury options. February 27th, I think. Yep. So sometimes the Life Miles site won't show things that it's supposed to be showing. You can see here they're offering us a business one through Frankfurt, which Lufthansa isn't the best business class, so I wouldn't probably take this, but you can see that they're charging 63K for it. Sometimes you have to mess around with the site by going back to the search, and instead of letting it decide, like Smart Search, just either tell it Star Alliance or United Airlines maybe specifically, and usually we can pull it up. And just to clarify, February 27th. February 27th. We'll try one more time, Star Alliance, and this is kind of unfortunately a common thing with the Life Miles site. So even though sometimes they'll charge less, 63K like you saw for that region, if it doesn't appear, there's literally nothing you can do. So we would take Air Canada in that case. But we'll give it a shot one more time with the Star Alliance search, and it just pulled up a option, but just not the nonstop that we were looking at. So okay, Life Miles doesn't have a quote for us. United is too high, so Air Canada wins. And that's the process, right? So we're looking here, we're looking for availability. Then we want to quote it on various partners and make sure we're getting a good price. And then you can make your decision from there. The only other thing I would probably do here is see if there were any Charlotte options available. Since that's where we were coming from, you can search here CLT. Nothing nonstop, at least on those dates. And that may be because a lot of times those small airport nonstops to Europe are really packed, or they sell really well or whatever, because it's like one flight every 2 days or one flight a day, and it's the only way to get to Europe. And so that may happen. In other cases, we're maybe too far out and they'll wait till a little closer in to release them. And in even more specific cases, like Charlotte to Munich, for example, is a Lufthansa flight. Lufthansa sometimes doesn't like to release business or first space until like literally a month or less out. So sometimes those won't even exist, even though they will be there. They're not there yet, right? But not a problem. We have to usually connect from Charlotte anyway, so we could just fly to New York or any one of these other places like DC, you see here, to Rome. There's probably many, many more. Lots of Emirates from New York, so we could just go there, and that's what I would do, or Miami if you chose to go down there. So that's basically how it works. And I guess one of the main things you want to do when doing all this is calculating the value, right? Like, is it even worth it for me to use points? Maybe the cash rate is really good. So we can do that with Google Flights as well. So let's just use that JFK to Milan example in business. And I like to calculate round trip because the pricing will be a little bit better. Let's just say like a 7-day round trip or something. And nonstop from New York, so we're looking apples to apples. So 3K round trip, 4K with Emirates, and some days it's closer to one or the other, some days 5. So we can say like a 4K average. So if we divide that by 2 to get the one-way price, that would be like $2,000, let's just say. So that's the value that we're getting for the 75K average that we found. We found 70, we found 80s, whatever, right? So we can just do the cash price divided by the amount of points. And this is the value that we're getting, 2.6 cents. Like if this was a whole dollar, right, that'd be 2.6 cents. And the reason that this number is important is because if you have points or cash back or fake travel rewards or whatever, they'll usually let you cash them out at a fixed value, right? That might be 1 cent, 1.2, 0.6 cents, sometimes like a lot less. So if you know that you can always get 1 cent, let's just say on average, then those same 75K points would be worth $750 via the super easy pay with points method on whatever credit card portal. I don't advise doing that because this is the bottom of the barrel value, obviously. And, you know, but that's what you would get. But in this case, we're getting an average $2,000-$3,000 one-way flight instead for the same amount of points, right? So we're getting 2.6 instead of 1. So that's almost 3 times the value in a really quick, easy example. And this is a very cheap route, of course. If we went and did something different than this, I don't know, in Chicago, well, I guess there's not even nonstops, but I don't know, literally anywhere else, even DC maybe is more expensive. There's not even nonstops every single day, so it's tough to see. So anyway, whatever, it's hard to tell, but anyway, that New York one is a little bit on the cheaper side. So that's why we run the calculation, because if it was any cheaper than that, if it was like a 2K round trip, then all of a sudden the points value would be not worth using them unless you had a lot of points, or you know, you just didn't care, right? Or you were cool with portal value or whatever. So it's important to calculate the value and see. And actually, I can show you real quick an example of what the portal would charge for the same flight. So let's look at that. Okay, so here it is loaded on the Chase travel portal. So we can see that on some dates, it even gets as low as like a couple thousand round trip. And so if those dates work for you and you wanted to fly AA or whatever, then it may not even make sense to use points, right? But in the Emirates example, which is what I would do, it's obviously quite a bit more expensive. It's a much nicer product than AA. I mean, probably like 5 times nicer, really, especially on this specific plane that they fly on this route. So we can see here the similar round trip cost that we had calculated, like $4,000 or so. So if we cut this in half, they're charging you about 90,000 points and like 1,000 extra dollars, right? So it's obviously a lot more, right? And more tax and more cash and more everything involved. So this is why we choose to redeem with partners instead. Even in this case where the cash value is low and it's like not even the best redemption in the world because that's just a short-ish route, you know, for Europe's comparisons, I guess. It still makes a lot more sense to transfer to partners and quote and find the availability, especially because you can get a pretty expensive business fare for 75K points and $50 or something like that instead of thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of points, right? So it'll save you 2-3x in this not even that great example, okay? This is just a real life example that you may encounter, especially if you're on the East Coast already and going to Milan or to Italy, right? So anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that. I think that's all I got for you today. I just wanted to kind of talk about everything from A to Z, right? You make sure you're earning the right points on the right cards, which is transferable currencies. Make sure you're finding availability and leveraging all the tools available to you, like seats.arrow. And make sure you're quoting, right? Because like you saw in the Emirates example, there was 87K, there was 75K. For United, there was 63, 70, 80. Like it's all over the range and for the same exact thing. So why would you pay more for the same thing, just to save a few minutes of like not looking at the other sites, right? So again, all the resources are going to be below: the cards, the points, the sites I used. And if you want to learn more strategies like this and travel the whole world in business and first class and do it for as free as possible, as close to zero really as you can, including hotels, then check out my program Lux Travel Hacks. It's linked below also, and I'll see you in first class.